I took my daughter to the hospital for her next chemotherapy session when the doctor stopped us and said, "Your daughter never had cancer." It was a cold October day. I was carrying Olivia in my arms to the hospital, the wind cutting my face. My daughter, only 7 years old, was weaker than ever. Her head, once full of golden curls, was now covered by a scarf. She looked at me with those big, tired eyes. "Dad, is everything going to be okay?" she asked in a low voice. I nodded, even though inside I felt like everything was falling apart. It had been 6 months since we were given the leukemia diagnosis. 6 months of appointments, needles, and sleepless nights. Marcella, my wife, was my support. As a pediatric oncology nurse, she knew how to handle everything. Appointments, doctors, medications. She even created a fundraising page to pay for the treatment. People donated a lot, and that helped us. But seeing Olivia so weak, without hair, getting thinner and thinner from the chemotherapy, was a blow to the heart. We arrived at the hospital and sat in the waiting room. Olivia was playing with her red braids doll, huddled against me. Dr. Morales, our oncologist, approached with a serious face. "Mario, I need to talk to you," she said, pointing to an office. I left Olivia with a nurse and followed her with a bad feeling. In the office, Morales closed the door and got straight to the point. We reviewed Olivia's latest tests. There's no trace of cancer, no markers, nothing. It's as if she never had leukemia. I froze. "What do you mean she doesn't have cancer?" "She's been on chemotherapy for months. She's weak, she has no hair." "How is that possible?" My voice came out louder than I intended. She held up a hand. "I know. It's confusing. We ran more tests and found toxins in her blood. Something that shouldn't be there. It's not from the chemotherapy. We need to know what Olivia is consuming at home." My head was spinning. "Toxins. Are you telling me someone is poisoning her?" Morales didn't answer, but her look said it all. She gave me a list. Food, drinks, medications, everything Olivia was taking. "We're suspending chemotherapy for now. Write down everything that happens at home," she said. I walked out of there in a daze. Olivia was waiting for me, coloring a picture. I picked her up and we left the hospital without saying much. On the way, my phone vibrated. A comment on the fundraising page. "Be careful, Mario, not everything is as it seems. Talk to me." Signed, Pedro. I didn't know who he was, but that message put me on edge. At home, Marcella was in the kitchen. "How did it go?" she asked as always, affectionate but firm. I told her what the doctor said. "That's strange. They must have made a mistake." "I'll talk to them tomorrow," she replied, unfazed. Her calmness seemed odd, but I didn't say anything. I was exhausted. That night, I didn't sleep. Morales's words and Pedro's message wouldn't leave me alone. I got up for some water and saw Marcella's laptop open to the fundraising page. There were hundreds of supportive comments, but also several from Pedro. "Investigate, Mario, don't trust." I felt a chill. Who was this guy? The next day, I sent Pedro a private message. "Who are you? What do you know?" He replied quickly. "I'm Pedro Alvarez. My son Alex died 2 years ago. I believe your wife is involved. Meet me at the cafe on 12th Street tomorrow at 10 a.m., for Olivia's sake." My heart raced. I didn't know if I could trust him, but something told me I had to listen. I left Olivia with my sister and went to the cafe. Pedro was a man in his 40s with a face marked by pain. Without beating around the bush, he told me his story. His son Alex had leukemia, treated at our hospital with Marcella as his nurse. She was perfect, always attentive, but Alex wasn't getting better. When he died, I discovered he didn't have cancer. He was poisoned, Mario, and I think it was Marcella. He showed me documents, autopsy results, messages from other parents. Everything pointed to Marcella having manipulated Alex's symptoms. I didn't want to believe it. Marcella was my wife, Olivia's mother, but the doubts were already there. If you don't believe me, watch her. Put up a camera, check what she gives Olivia, Pedro said. He gave me his number and left. I returned home with my mind reeling. Marcella was feeding Olivia, smiling as always, but now everything about her seemed suspicious. That night, I found an old security camera in the basement and placed it in the kitchen, hidden behind a plant. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, but I needed answers. The next few days were hell. I watched Marcella prepare Olivia's food and felt a deep mistrust. I checked the camera footage every night but saw nothing unusual. Until the third night. In the video, Marcella was crushing white pills with a mortar and pestle and mixing them into Olivia's cereal. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. She was poisoning our daughter. I didn't wait any longer. The next day, I confronted Marcella. I showed her the video and demanded an explanation. Her face changed from calm to panic. "It's not what you think," she stammered. Before she could answer, someone banged on the door. It was Pedro, and he had a gun in his hand. "Tell him the truth, Marcella," he shouted, pointing it at her. Olivia, who was on the couch watching cartoons, let out a scream and hid under a blanket. "Put that gun down. You're scaring my daughter," I yelled, stepping between him and Marcella. Pedro was breathing like he'd run a marathon, but he lowered the gun slightly. "I don't want to hurt anyone, Mario. But she has to confess what she did to my Alex. What she's doing to Olivia has to stop." Marcella sank into a chair, covering her face. "I don't know what you're talking about," she mumbled, but it sounded more like a plea than a defense. I looked at her, searching for the woman I had shared my life with, but I only saw a stranger. "What are you doing to Olivia?" I asked, my voice breaking. She just shook her head, saying nothing. Pedro took a step forward. "I told you, Mario. She poisoned my son. She made everyone believe he had cancer, just like with Olivia. I found the records, the drugs she used. She's sick." His voice was filled with pain, and for a second, I felt sorry for him, but I was also afraid. What if he was right? What if Marcella was capable of something so monstrous? "Pedro, put the gun away. Let's talk like people," I said, trying to stay calm. Olivia was still crying softly on the couch. I ran to her and hugged her. "It's okay, little one, everything is going to be all right," I whispered, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. I took her to her room, put her headphones on with some music, and asked her to stay there. I returned to the living room where Pedro was still pointing the gun at Marcella. "Explain, Marcella," Pedro said, calmer but still firm. "Tell him. Why were you crushing pills and putting them in your daughter's food?" Marcella lifted her head, tears streaming down her face. "It's not what you think. They were vitamins, Mario. I wanted her to feel better. But she couldn't look me in the eye, and her voice sounded hollow. Vitamins. I yelled. The doctor found toxins in her blood. Olivia is sick, and you have something to do with it. I pulled out my phone and showed her the camera video again. These are not vitamins. What is this? She was trembling but didn't answer. Pedro took another step. Tell him the truth, or I will, he said, his voice tense. I couldn't take it anymore. I called the police from my phone without taking my eyes off Pedro. The police are on their way. Put that gun away before this gets worse. He hesitated but finally placed the gun on the table. I don't want trouble, Mario. I just want justice, he said, his voice cracking. When the police arrived, it was a mess. Marcella was crying, Pedro was shouting accusations, and I just wanted to protect Olivia. The officers separated Pedro and took him to the kitchen to question him while another spoke with me and Marcela. I showed them the video and told them what Dr. Morales had said. A police officer, an older guy with a tired face, looked at Marcela. "Do you have anything to say?" he asked. She just shook her head, crying non-stop. I took Olivia to my sister's house that same afternoon. I didn't want her to see any more of this. As I told my sister everything, she was in shock. "Mario, how did you not notice before?" Marcela has always been so controlling about Olivia. Her words hurt, but she was right. I had been blind, trusting that Marcela knew what was best for our daughter. That night, I searched the house. I found a diary on Marcela's desk, hidden under some papers. My heart pounded as I opened it. There it was. Dates, dosages, Olivia's symptoms. Day 23. 0.5 milligrams in the cereal. Noticeable weakness. Day 24. 0.7 milligrams, loss of appetite. It was like reading something written by a monster. Every word confirmed what Pedro had said. Marcela was poisoning Olivia, making her seem sick. But why? For the money from the fundraiser? For attention? I couldn't understand it. I called Pedro and told him about the diary. "That's what she used with Alex," he said. "She documented everything as if it were an experiment. Give it to the police." The next day, I took the diary to the station. The detectives reviewed it and told me it was enough to open a serious investigation. They also took samples of Olivia's food and some pills I found hidden in the kitchen. Everything indicated that Marcela was using a medication that mimicked the symptoms of cancer, something that, as a nurse, she knew how to get. The following days were a whirlwind. Marcela was arrested but was released on bail while the investigation continued. I didn't let her come back home. I moved with Olivia to a small apartment I rented with my sister's help. Every night, I made sure Olivia ate well, that she didn't have any more of those vitamins. Dr. Morales called us in for new tests, and the results were a bittersweet relief. The toxins in her blood were decreasing, but the emotional damage would take time. Pedro became a strange kind of ally. He called me several times to offer encouragement, but also to warn me. "She's dangerous, Mario. Don't let her near Olivia." I just wanted it all to be over, for Olivia to be safe, but I also wanted answers. How had I lived with someone capable of doing this to her own daughter? One morning, Dr. Morales called me. "Mario, we found more evidence. The pills Marcela was using are a controlled medication, difficult to obtain without hospital contacts. We're working with the police to track how she got them." She also said that Olivia was improving physically but needed therapy for the trauma. I felt relief, but also guilt. How did I not see it sooner? Marcela continued to deny everything. She hired an expensive lawyer, paid for with money from the fundraiser, which made me even angrier. The page was still active, and every donation I saw reminded me of how she had deceived everyone. I wrote a message on the page explaining the truth and shut it down. I received comments of support, but also of hate. Some said I must have known, that I was as guilty as she was. Those words hurt, but not as much as thinking about what Olivia had been through. One night, Pedro sent me a message. "Check Marcela's email if you can. I found something in my ex's messages that might help." I remembered Marcela sometimes used my laptop. I checked the history and found an open account. There were emails to a drug supplier, orders for pills, messages to a colleague at the hospital asking for favors. It was all there, like a written confession. I took the emails to the police. The detectives thanked me and said this strengthened the case, but they also warned me, Marcela is not going to give up easily. Prepare for the trial. I didn't know how I was going to face it, but I would do it for Olivia. She deserved justice, she deserved a life without fear. Olivia began to show small signs of recovery. One afternoon, she asked me to paint with her, something we hadn't done since before the diagnosis. Seeing her smile as she drew a bright sun gave me hope, but I knew the road ahead would be long. The trial was approaching, and with it, the truth would come to light. I just hoped I was ready for what was coming. Everything pointed to her having poisoned our daughter, faking a cancer that never existed. But how do you face that? How do you explain to your daughter that her mother hurt her on purpose? The days before the trial were a whirlwind. I met with the prosecutors several times. They explained that the case was solid but that Marcella and her lawyer were going to fight dirty. She's going to say it's all a misunderstanding, that the pills were to help Olivia, the prosecutor, a woman with a firm but kind voice, told me. But with the evidence we have, she has no escape. They also warned me that the trial would be public and that the press was already sniffing around the story. I didn't want Olivia to go through that, so I kept her away from everything, with my sister helping me take care of her. Pedro stayed in touch, though now with less fury. He called one night to tell me more about his son, Alex. He was like Olivia, he said, always smiling, even when he was weak. When I found out what Marcella did to him, I wanted to kill her, but now I just want her to pay for what she did. I thanked him for his help but asked him to stay on the sidelines. I didn't want any more scenes like the one with the gun at my house. He understood, though I could tell it was hard for him to stay still. The day of the trial arrived quickly. I sat in the courtroom with my heart in my throat. Marcella was at the front in a gray suit that made her look smaller. She didn't look at me once. The prosecutor presented the evidence one by one, the camera video showing Marcella crushing the pills and mixing them into Olivia's cereal, the diary, with its cold, calculated notes, the emails where she ordered medication from a shady supplier. They also called Dr. Morales, who explained how the toxins in Olivia's blood had nothing to do with chemotherapy but with a drug that caused cancer-like symptoms. Marcella's lawyer tried to deflect. He said I was a negligent father, that I didn't notice what was happening in my own home. He tried to paint Marcella as a desperate mother who only wanted to help her daughter. But when the prosecutor showed the diary, his defense crumbled. One of the entries read, Day 47, 0.8 milligrams, vomited twice, perfect imitation of leukemia. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge seemed surprised. When they called me to the stand, I felt my legs tremble. I told them everything, how I trusted Marcella, how I missed the signs, how I found the diary. It hurt to speak, but I did it for Olivia. The prosecutor asked me if I knew why Marcella had done this. I didn't have a clear answer. I think she wanted attention, I said. The fundraising page made her feel important, like a hero. But I don't understand how she could do this to her own daughter. The room was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. Marcella also spoke. She took the stand crying, saying it was all a mistake, that the pills were to help Olivia feel better. But when the prosecutor pressed her, asking why she had documented the doses as if it were an experiment, she was speechless. She just cried, and her lawyer asked for a recess. It didn't do much good. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. The verdict was unanimous, guilty of attempted murder, child abuse, and fraud. The sentence came a week later, 25 years in prison, with no possibility of contacting Olivia. When the judge delivered the verdict, I felt a mix of relief and emptiness. Marcella collapsed in her chair, sobbing, but I felt no pity. I just wanted Olivia to be safe. After the trial, the press wouldn't leave us alone. They published sensational headlines, Mother poisons daughter for money and fame. I had to change my number and keep Olivia away from the news. We moved to a small town a couple of hours away. With the help of social services and victim compensation, I rented a modest house with a small garden. I wanted Olivia to have a place where she could feel normal again. Olivia's recovery was slow, but every day I saw a little more of the girl she used to be. Dr. Morales recommended a child therapist, and although Olivia didn't want to talk at first, she slowly began to open up. "Sometimes I miss Mom," she told me once while we were playing at the park. "But I'm also scared of her." I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her. The therapist helped us both, teaching me how to talk to Olivia without pushing her, how to help her heal. One day, as we were painting on the porch, Olivia asked me, "Why did Mom give me those pills?" I froze. I didn't want to lie to her, but I didn't want to hurt her more either. "Sometimes people do bad things because they are lost," I said. "But you are strong, and now we are together. No one is ever going to hurt you again." She nodded and continued painting. This time, a rainbow. It was the first time she didn't press with more questions. Pedro wrote me a couple of times after the trial. He said he felt there was justice for Alex, even though nothing would bring him back. He thanked me for listening to his story and for stopping Marcella before it was too late for Olivia. I replied that I didn't know how to thank him. Without him, I might never have suspected Marcella. He asked me to take care of Olivia, and I promised I would with my life. Over time, we created new routines. I enrolled Olivia in a small school where she quickly made friends. She started playing soccer, something I never thought she'd have the energy to do after everything that had happened. Every goal she scored was like a small victory for both of us. I got a job at a local hardware store, nothing fancy, but enough to support us. At night, we read stories together, and she would fall asleep with a smile. One afternoon, while tidying up the house, I found one of Olivia's drawings from the dark days of faded sun with gray clouds. I compared it to her new ones, full of vibrant colors. I put the old drawing in a box, not because I wanted to forget, but because it was part of our story. Olivia had survived, and so had I. We weren't perfect, and the trauma was still there, but we were healing, step by step. Sometimes I would wake up at night thinking about Marcella. How could she have gone so far? The therapist told me she likely suffered from a disorder that made her seek attention at any cost, even by hurting her own daughter. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand it, but it didn't matter anymore. My job was to protect Olivia, to give her the childhood she deserved. One day, as we were walking to the park, Olivia took my hand and said, "Dad, I like our new house. It feels like a home." I smiled, my eyes welling up. "Yes, little one. It's our home." And for the first time in a long time, I felt that it truly was.